Today we will continue the second part of the subject impression for crown and bridge work. We will deal with the impression techniques. What we will need to take a final impression. Of course, we will need different viscosities of impression materials. Either we will need a putty soft, heavy, medium or regular, light body or extra light body, or ultra thin impression materials, either for hand mix or for auto mixing devices. Basically, for all impression techniques, we will need two impression materials. The first material is called the tray material, which is the material that is loaded in the impression tray. And the second material is called the syringe material, which is placed in the impression syringe and used to inject the material around the area of the preparation. We will need special tray fabricated from either self-cured or photopolymerized acrylic resin. The advantages of using the special tray is that it has a smaller size as compared with the stock tray, so it is more comfortable for the patient. Another advantage of using a special tray is that it will reduce the volume or amount of the impression material that is needed in the impression taking, and this will in turn reduce the dimensional changes that might occur in the impression material. Also, we will need a tray adhesive. It is a form of cyanoacrylate resin that will provide a chemical adhesion or a chemical bond of the impression material to the impression tray. It is preferable to use the tray adhesive even when we use a perforated tray, since it will provide a more favorable distribution of the contraction forces of the impression material. Techniques in fixed prosthodontics. Basically, we have three main techniques. One-step single viscosity technique, one-step double viscosity technique, and two-step putty wash technique. Other synonyms or nomenclatures for these techniques is the one-step single viscosity technique, also called single mix technique or monophase. The one-step double viscosity technique is also called double mix technique, and the two-step putty wash technique is two-step putty wash technique. One-step single viscosity technique. As the name denotes, in this technique, the impression is taken in a one step and using a single viscosity of impression material, that is the medium viscosity impression material or regular body. This viscosity is found in polyether and vinyl polysiloxane or addition silicone. These materials are thixotropic materials having pseudoplastic properties, as we explained in the first part of this subject. Thixotropic materials will undergo when these materials are subjected to force or pressure, the viscosity or consistency of the material is reduced or decreased, and the thus the flowability of the material will increase. This enables the use of the same material as a tray material and as a syringe material. In this technique, we load the impression tray with the impression material, and we load the impression syringe at the same time. So the same material is used as a tray material and as a syringe material. Then we start syringing the material around the prepared tooth or teeth, then around other teeth in the dental arch, and seat the impression tray inside the patient's mouth. After complete setting of the impression material, the tray is removed from the patient's mouth. In the one-step double viscosity technique, as the name denotes, the impression is also taken in a one step, but using two viscosities of impression materials, that the heavy body and the light body. We mix the heavy body and the light body at the same time. Then we load the heavy body in the tray, and we load the light body in the impression syringe, and we start injecting the light body around the prepared tooth, then other teeth in the dental arch, and then we insert the tray inside the patient's mouth. And the heavy body at this time, the heavy body, due to its higher viscosity than the light body, it will exert forces on or compressive forces on the light body that will force the light body to flow and record the area of the finishing line. After complete setting of the impression material, the impression tray is removed from the patient's mouth. In the two-step putty wash technique, as the name denotes, unlike the preceding techniques, the two preceding techniques, the impression is taken in two steps and using a putty and wash material. In this technique, we have two sub-techniques. Either we take the first impression with the putty, either it is taken before a preparation or after a preparation. Before a preparation, we take a putty impression prior to the tooth preparation, then we complete the tooth preparation, then relieving channels are cut in the putty impression using a special instrument called putty cut. These relieving channels are cut away in order to provide escape way for the light body that is to be applied in the second step of the two-step putty wash technique. After we cut the relieving channels, we inject the light body over the preparation area and inside the tray, and we reseat the tray inside the patient's mouth. And after complete setting of the impression material, the tray is removed from the patient's mouth. In technique, after we complete the tooth preparation, we load the tray with the putty impression material. Then a spacer is placed over the putty material. This spacer is made either from polyethylene sheet or from nylon, and then we take the putty impression with the spacer in place. After complete seating of the putty impression, we remove the tray from the patient's mouth, remove the spacer, then we inject the light body or extra light body inside the impression and inside the patient's mouth around the prepared teeth. Then we reseat as we see in this movie. This is the impression is taken with the spacer. Then the spacer is removed. Then light body is injected around the prepared teeth for distribution of the light body. Then the tray with the body the two-step putty wash technique with spacer. It is important to mention here that we should use the right consistency of the impression material for each technique. Don't switch between techniques. This means that for each impression technique we should use the right consistency of impression material. For example, we in the one-step double viscosity impression technique, where we should use a heavy and light body. We should not switch and use a putty and light body. This is because the putty impression material has higher viscosity than the light body. So if we use in the one-step double viscosity impression technique, if we use putty instead of the heavy, the putty, due to its higher viscosity, it will force the light body away from the area of the finishing line, and thus the area of the finishing line will be recorded with the putty material rather than the light body, and it will be devoid of details. Similarly, in the two-step putty wash technique, if we use a heavy body instead of the putty, in the second step of this technique, when we apply the wash material, due to the thinner consistency of the heavy as compared with the putty, the light body might exert compression forces on the heavy and will result in inaccurate impression. After we take the final impression, we should do disinfection of the impression. Unfortunately, this step is most of the time is discarded, is not performed by many dentists. The importance of disinfection of the impression is that حتى احنا ما ننقل أي contagious diseases or viral diseases ما راح ننقلها من الامبريشن إلى الكاست ومن ثم إلى اللابراتوري تكنيشن اللي راح يشتغل الشغل مالت المختبر. لهذا السبب الامبريشن ورا ما راح ناخذها should be washed well and then should be disinfected. هواية عندنا يعني ماتيريال للديسانفكشن، ممكن يكون صوديوم هايبوكلورايد، ممكن يكون جلوتالالديهايد different concentrations، ممكن يكون على شكل سبراي نسوي سبراينج للامبريشن قبل لا نسوي لها بورينج، او ممكن يكون على شكل ليكويد نسوي immersion للامبريشن بهذا الليكويد او السوليوشن. التايم معين يختلف من منتج الى اخر ومن شركة الى اخرى، لهذا السبب لازم نقرأ الانستراكشنز مالت المانيفاكتشرر مالت الماتيريال prior to its use. يتعلق بما يسمى بالفيزيكال بالconventional impression or analog impression. Now the new subject is the digital impression. Digital impression by means of using an intraoral scanner. الانتراأورال سكانر هو عبارة عن high resolution intraoral camera that will provide a 3D virtual image of the teeth and surrounding tissues. نشوف عن طريق هذه الامبريشن راح نشوف بأنه بالديجيتال امبريشن شلون راح نقدر نسوي inspection للبريباريشن مالتنا، شلون راح نقدر نشوف من كل الاتجاهات، نقدر نسوي evaluation للبريباريشن، evaluation للسبيس عن الopposing teeth، ايضا راح نشيك الارتكوليشن، فراح تنطينا هواية facilities بالشغل. ايضا بالهاي الديجيتال امبريشن راح يكون عندنا فد سوفت وير خاص اللي عن طريقه ممكن انه نسوي ديزايننج للفاينل ريستوريشن ونحصل عليها للفاينل. اذا نجي نقارن ما بين الكونفنشنال امبريشن ومع الديجيتال امبريشن، راح نشوف بانه بالديجيتال امبريشن ما راح نحتاج إلى استخدام التري الامبريشن تري، ما راح نحتاج إلى استخدام التري ادهيزيف، ما راح نحتاج إلى نسوي disinfection of the impression، أيضا ما راح نحتاج أنه نسوي ترانسبورت للامبريشن إلى اللاب. أوكي، بنفس الوقت ما راح نحتاج أنه نصب الامبريشن، ما راح نحتاج نضيع وقت ننتظر إلى السيتنج تايم، ما راح نحتاج إلى جيبسم برودكتس، فإذا كل هذه الأشياء ما راح نحتاجها. فإذا الديجيتال امبريشن از ذا يعني ما نريد نقول انه هي الفيوتشر لانه هي هسه واقع الحالي اللي موجود، ولكن هذا لا يعني بانه الكونفنشنال امبريشن هي مو زينه. الكونفنشنال امبريشن استخدمت لعشرات السنين ونطتنا نتائج كلش زينه، ولكن الشيء المهم جدا بالكونفنشنال امبريشن انه لازم يكون عندنا proper understanding of the physical properties of the impression material that we use, so that we can handle the material properly and can take a successful final impression with each material. And finally, thank you.